Hello everyone, welcome back. This is project meeting 2 of session 1 for Design at Columbia this summer. I'm going to start by, Yes, I'm going to start by highlighting student project progress. So I think we have maybe like 15 minutes ago, we checked, we had 52 submissions so far on the assignment page, which is awesome. A lot of you are in teams. So I think we have about 100 students who have submitted work that they've done in the past week, which is really, really awesome. The team went over, kind of briefly looked through some of them that were submitted by this morning, and we'd love to highlight a few of them which stood out, that just really caught our eye. So the first one is the project is personalized online shopping, how to stop the endless scrolling and waste of time. This is by Esme, Taya, Marielle, and Jorge. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. So we've thought this is our competitive analysis table. I personally really liked how clear it was visually to distinguish between the yes and the no's with color, and also the column on the right hand side which says notes kind of just gives you that opportunity to note down anything that is important and worth noting, but doesn't quite fall into one of the categories that you've lined up. So yeah, and Perrin and Lydia and Mark, feel free to hop in at any time with kind of other comments that you want to give alongside me. Their interview quotes as well were really nicely presented. So have kind of highlighting parts of quotes that draw your eye to that part of the quote, really helps you pass through a lot of information quickly. So even though this is kind of a lot of words on a page, at the bottom, right at the bottom, it's hard to find that exact thing. Like I know that a user has difficulty finding exactly what they want when they're shopping online. And then the how might we's were really great and well refined. So I'll just walk you through them. How might we make it simpler for consumers to find what they're shopping for online and be able to save products they're interested in for later? The second one is how might we help online shoppers be more informed about similar products across the market? And the third one is how might we equip consumers to shop from large and small fashion brands alike? So they're all within the online fashion space, but they're exploring kind of different areas of that space, which is very cool to see.
I can take this next one if you want.
Yeah, go for it, Perrin.
Awesome. I met with this little crew during office hours, so I'll cover theirs. But pretty much they're working on routine during quarantine, Roxanne, Joy, and Wendy. Next slide. This is not their only kind of background/competitive analysis table. They had a few in their deck because they're a 3-person team. But what I really loved about their competitor analysis and background research was they kind of split it up into, the content, a summary, and then I love this third column of impact on our project and the questions that it brought about. Because we can really see kind of how this content is impacting their thinking and kind of influencing the future questions that they have in the project. Next slide. And then here's some top quotes. Again, super suggest bolding, these sorts of things. It's really nice to see kind of those key quotes, key moments come out. Next slide. And lastly, you can see there are 3 how might we's. I'll kind of highlight the first one. How might we demonstrate this power of small habits in developing a routine? Just by reading this how might we, you can tell that they've done background research on small habits and the impact of people. If they didn't look into that background research of the kind of psychology of what makes a good routine, they wouldn't have arrived at this how might we. So good job to this team.
The next project that we have is, it was bring your own idea in terms of our project prompts. It's professional software price comparison app by Arthi. And first look is at the competitor table, which is, just really comprehensive, really great bullet points in each box to show that, the research is like well presented and in depth. This is another way to present key quotes from user interviews. Again, we've got both bolding and underlining here. It's not as static as presenting it in, just straight lines. So that's quite cool to see. And yeah, these are some great insights. And then these how might we's, I'll just read them out again. Show all brands and prices. How might we show all brands and prices of software needed for different tasks in a startup or business? How might we help narrow down the process of finding the best softwares for any business owner? And then the third one, how might we help rising entrepreneurs or startups find the right software at the best price? So the three that have been presented here kind of build off each other, leading to the final chosen one, which is really, really great to see that progression. And then we have another project. Perrin, did you want to take this on, or should I just keep going?
You can keep going. I might hop in though.
Okay. And then we have a shuttle service redesign project from Nicholas, Guillermina, and Stacy. So here's another really comprehensive competitor table. They thought to bring in the platform and the ratings for each app, quite clearly thinking about the sphere of apps that are out there in their problem space. And their interview quotes were very well presented and provided in context, which is really great. Oops, wrong way. And then again, we have some great refined how might we statements that are actually quite broad within in terms of how they differ from each other in this space, which I found really interesting. So how might we reinterpret the shuttle service app in a way that complements people's routines? How might we encourage more eligible riders to use the shuttle service during the school year? And how might we improve the reliability of shuttle service information? So they're all quite different, but I think it's really encouraging to see how they're exploring all of these different angles that you can approach the vague problem of what that is the Columbia shuttle service.
Can you actually go back to slide 16 there, competitor analysis? A really great pro tip. I love how you guys looked at platform and ratings. We can see Passio Go immediately 1.6 and 2.9 is pretty horrible compared to the previous app on the far right, which had 4.6 and 4.4. This is a really great place to get feedback if you don't have time for interviews. You can also go in the written feedback and written reviews and steal quotes from there. So this is a really great kind of data bank of more quotes if you feel like you're missing anything.
That's a great tip. Thank you, Perrin. And then the final project that we want to highlight, although we didn't ask you to do anything fancy with presentation, this team went ahead and did it anyway. So this is from Sarah, Katerina, and Hannah, and they are doing the redesign an app, and they've chosen Spotify to redesign. So we just found this presentation really compelling, kind of editing the Spotify interface to match the presentation. So here we have a competitor analysis table with a really creative use of pause and play icons. And then we have key quotes that are listed as songs, which you can favorite. And then the category is presented as the playlist name. And then we have how might we's. We begin with the main one, which is redesigning Spotify. And then again, taking quite a broad approach with these how might we's that focus on connectedness and community, well-being, and then politics and news. So it was really fun to see this project. We're not expecting everyone to get this creative, but it's definitely a nice touch, especially to think about towards the end of the summer session and you want to be maybe moving towards a presentation stage. So if you haven't yet submitted, that's totally okay. Please do so when you are ready and or able. We really encourage you to submit works in progress. Even though we didn't show you those, they all look very finalized. We have got loads of works in progress that have been submitted, and we want to encourage you to submit whenever you can. We'll provide feedback as soon as we can through the assignments platform. And if you wanted to get feedback at any other point in the week, not just through the assignments tab, just ask away in the feedback channel, or slide into any of our DMs on Slack, where we are here for you at any point. So let's talk about feedback a little bit more, because we've been talking about it a lot without really actually talking about what it is. So feedback is the breakfast of champions, is what Ken Blanchard said. And I've edited it to say it's the breakfast of designers. We really want to encourage you to get feedback, you know, as much as possible. We want it to be a positive part of the design process, because powerful feedback ultimately makes a great designer. So how do you ask for feedback? We have provided you with a 5-step kind of checklist, just to make sure that you're asking for feedback in the right way. I'll go through it now. So first step, you want to provide context for your project. So state your guiding how might we, or all of them, whichever is most relevant to you at this point in your project, or this idea that you're exploring. What are you presenting, and how does that fit into your overall project? I need to know where you're coming from in order to give feedback. What exactly would you like feedback on? Is it the idea? Is it the thought process behind it? Is it your copy, which is another word for all the writing that's on whatever you're presenting? Is it about information hierarchy, or the visual design elements like color and style? Make sure that you're being specific about what you want feedback on, just so that you're not wasting anyone's time, and it's useful for you. Oh. Thirdly, who do you want feedback from? Or rather, who do you not want feedback from? For example, a website for full-time working mothers aged 30 to 45 should not be tested by university students. It would not be appropriate to ask for feedback from them. So just make sure that you're getting feedback from the right people, otherwise you are not building for your user. 4, how would you like your feedback? So it can happen in a variety of ways. You can do an in-person walkthrough if you're at the prototyping stage, which we will get there in the end. In-person walkthrough, where someone kind of just goes through your prototype, whatever stage it's at, kind of in front of you on Zoom. Maybe they're sharing their screen. Is it through an interview where you ask them questions about designs that you present? Is it through a survey? Is it just comments on, you know, a Google Slides deck or on Figma? Is it one-page write-up? You know, you decide, state kind of how you want it and what will be most useful for you. And then finally, when do you need this feedback by, and how long will it take to do that? So if it's going to take an hour of interviews for each person, you can't expect to get them all done by tomorrow, so just be realistic with how much time that you need. We need you, and we want you to do this all the time. A really core concept of the design sprint is iterating fast and often, and you can't do that unless you have feedback and you have something to build off of. So we know how to ask for feedback. How about giving feedback? Firstly, we want you to be clear, concise, and constructive. And I'll give you a few examples about what I mean by that in a minute. We also want you to describe problems rather than offering solutions. And this is something that's not actually easy to do, especially in this space where we're all working towards and building in our design journey. But if someone is asking you for feedback, let them be the designer. Do not go all designer on them. Just describe the problems that you're seeing and let them figure out the solutions, because ultimately they have the user research and the context. We want to encourage you to do a 2-to-1 positive to negative ratio, which is also known as a love sandwich. So, you know, starting with, I like this, this could be improved on, but also great job on this is a nice way to, you know, have feedback that doesn't feel harsh. Ask questions, get in the mindset of the designer, users, and the business. Then give your feedback. If something's unclear to you and you don't really understand why you're being asked to do something, ask a question, ask the designer. Even just asking those questions and having the designer kind of explain their process will help them. And then finally, give the type of feedback you'd want to receive. It's the golden rule. So let's go through a few examples. I don't see the point of this idea. Is a little bit blunt, it's very vague in comparison to, I'm struggling to see how this addresses the user's problems. How can we build on this idea to make that connection clearer? So instead of offering a solution, you're saying, I don't really know where this is going. You told me about the user's problems, making that connection, kind of guiding the designer in that way, rather than just saying, I don't see the point, which can really shut people down. This makes me feel bored versus this color palette feels dull compared to your tone and target user of young children. So while you might open up a page and you know, just feel, oh my gosh, this looks terrible to me, I challenge you to reflect on why that is and what effect that has in the context of the project. And then finally, I'm just not feeling it, which is, you know, with design, that can be quite a common feeling, you know, I'm just not feeling it, versus something like, I'm not sure what this button achieves. The copy makes me think it's not a share button, but I'm on the share page. So being really specific with where your confusion, where your feelings are coming from, so that you can provide the best feedback. So we're going to try doing Kahoot. I don't know if this is going to work that well, but I would love to see how it goes. Let me see. I'm going to open one up now, hopefully, if it loads, and then everyone can log in. This is going to be like a little fun game about feedback. Okay. Okay. Feel free to join in. I would love to see people join in. Okay, I'm gonna give it like 30 more seconds. Is this nostalgic for people? This isn't, Kahoot isn't really a thing in England, but I know at least in my other classes, people love Kahoot.
I love the music. I've never done this before.
Can you hear
so I may
from my screen?
Oh, hell yeah. God, that's not in my head, is it? Please tell me somebody else can hear that. That'd be really embarrassing. Oh, someone says it is nostalgic. They haven't played since high school. Man,
Okay, we're at 61 players. I am going to play. Okay. Here we go. Which of these is a good how might we? The music is so intense. Okay, the answer is, how might we redesign ice cream to be more portable? That's in the context of the others for being either too broad or too narrow. So Well done to 32 of you who got it
Wait,
right.
I got it wrong. I was red. Why is that wrong?
That's embarrassing, Lydia.
I know. I'm over being embarrassed. So someone can explain it to me later.
Okay, you are your user. True or false?
Well, we've got this one going. The how might we around the dripping ice cream cone is too specific because it defines the solution as a cone.
False. You are not your user. That's why you do research, user research on people that are not you. Okay, next question. Oh, Pest, Susanna, Roxanne, Anais, and Martina. Fabulous job. Okay, which of the following movies was not filmed, at least in part, on Columbia's campus? This is just a fun trivia quiz. I actually have no idea. What is it? Dawn of the Dead. I have never seen the others, so I can't comment.
What part of Casino Royale is filmed on campus? Like the good one? The new one? Okay, I'll shut up. Sorry.
Okay, next question. Let's see the scoreboard. Susanna, race to the top. Smashing it. Okay, next person. What is not a productive way to give feedback? It's offer solutions, not problems. That's the opposite of what we want to do. We want to offer the problems or describe the problems rather than offering solutions. So good job to the people who got that. Susanna's still at the top, absolutely smashing it. I think we have one more question. Oh, when should you seek feedback? The answer is, the answer is all the time, but I think we had 3 options as the correct answer, because technically they count as all the time. Okay, sweet. Oh, congratulations. I've never seen this before. Susanna, you absolutely smashed it. Fab job. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. Turn off that music. Okay, I hope everyone enjoyed that. That was definitely a trial run. So let us know what you think in the feedback channel of Slack, if you enjoyed that or not. Okay, we're gonna keep moving on. And we're going to talk about faculty advisors. Lydia, do you want to jump in now?
Yeah, I do. So there are 4 people who would love to talk to you this week. One is Sarah Morrison-Smith. Sarah, are you here? If you are, do you want to unmute?
I am here.
Yay. All right. So this is Sarah. Picture of her, real version of her. So you can compare. She's at Barnard and CS. She teaches like contextual design is basically very similar to this class, like understanding the underpinnings and also accessible technology. I think your class focuses on blind users. Is that true?
No, that's Brian's class.
Right.
Brian's, yeah.
And she's generally an expert in all things user research. Sarah, what else should people know about you?
That you should absolutely take my classes if you're at all interested in what we are doing here this summer. There are several of you, including Perrin, who took my accessibility class this last spring, took the contextual design course in the fall. And one of the cool things about the contextual design course is that you get an opportunity to build a prototype with actual users. You have to talk to real people in the community and find out what they need. So it's really good portfolio builder if you're interested in this. So, and then the other thing is that the easiest way to contact me is through email.
Yeah, awesome, great. So we've got a couple other people. Okay. Yeah, so Brian Smith, he teaches user interface design, same class I do. He teaches at fall, I teach in the spring. In addition to being Columbia computer science faculty, he also works at, well, Snap, the company that makes Snapchat, which has all sorts of interesting, like multi-user not really problems, like how do you design these social interactions? So he's great at that. Additionally, he was an undergrad, a PhD student, and now faculty here. So if there's something about Columbia, he knows it. He was also a tour guide. So he is so awesome and in tune with needs of students and can channel all that. Great, next. Adam Royalty is really the head of Columbia's Entrepreneurship Design Studio, which is this incredible place, more for sort of advanced students once you want to practice design, take classes. He's also a researcher at the Stanford D School, their design school, which is like ours, but a little bit worse. He teaches a lot of different design classes, including design for social innovation, partners a lot with the School of Social Work and SEPA. He's an expert in product market fit, ideation, and he's just like super awesome. When I get stuck, I talk to him. So he's someone who really wants to talk to you this week. And lastly, I think we have Harry West is an amazing asset. He teaches a human-centered design and innovation class.
He might be on this call.
Harry, are you here? Do you want to say things?
I'm here.
Ah, you can compare Harry too. Yeah. Who is Harry West?
But you were doing such a nice job. I think I'll just sit back on mute and let you finish.
Yeah, so he is an amazing resource here that we have at Columbia. It's also like a nice human being, always great. So he has been the head of many design companies. They have really extensive research. He really knows what he's doing. He has some of the most amazing like stories of what it's like to go in and do design and figure it out. And he's the one that convinced me that, oh, you really have to talk to people. Like really, like every time. Like if you're stuck, talk to people. So absolutely, he's an expert in everything design, and storytelling is something he's also introduced me to as a really powerful technique. What else, Harry?
That's all. That's enough.
The end. No.
Happy to engage and help in any way I can. Slack, email, text, whatever.
Yeah. So I just want to say a word. So we have lots of experts like these around, and we have a specific way that we'd like you to request faculty feedback. First is make a very short slide deck of the project so far that you want to present to an expert and get feedback on. I would say direct message me on Slack with a link to that deck. I'll look at it and then decide what kind of advice you need. Maybe you just need some internal advising from Perrin, Laura, myself, Mark, or maybe you really do need an expert. And I can help you find the right person. So let me just take a minute and say, like, the faculty at any institution are an amazing resource. However, it's not always clear how to use that resource. I know when I was a freshman, I would go up to faculty and they're like, what are you talking about? Freshman, you know nothing. And I would get very scared. It took me a long time to get the confidence to ask them things. But now that I am faculty, I understand that it's actually tricky. Almost all faculty really want to help undergraduates, but there's some issues there. First of all, I always want to know how serious that person is, because I get a lot of like random questions. I'm like, I want to remake Facebook in green. And I'm like, well, really? I'm not sure what advice I can really give you there. Like, have you done any research on it? Like, if I just have to kind of Google it for you. So, and that's a great thing about this class is we're showing you how to do those introductory steps so that you don't have to ask, someone who's designed all the way around the world to do a Google search for you. And also another tricky thing about asking for advice is that you want to get the timing right. Sometimes I've gotten shut down just because that person was busy, or sometimes people want to pitch me their project idea 5 minutes before I'm going to give a lecture, and this is not the time. I personally just can't invest right there, and I end up being a little rude. So what we really want to do as part of this community is help you get the expert help you need, or just help from each other. We really do want you to reach out. We want to make that smooth, because I know as an undergraduate, I experienced problems with that. As faculty, I experienced those problems. So we are trying to help. So please create a short deck and DM me, and we will figure it out. And if you don't really know what your question is, you can just DM me and say, help. I would love to try to sort it out with you.
Great, thank you, Lydia. Okay, so I realized that we are running very slightly behind schedule, but thankfully this part of the deck is quite short. I'm just going to launch phase 2 of our design sprint, which is the define phase. So defining in a nutshell. When you define, you evaluate everything you learn in the understand phase to establish focus for your project. So we hope that in the next week that you will define a specific context and the desired outcomes of potential solutions for your problem space. So you've done the research, now what? For this upcoming week, we're asking you to deliver 4 slides for the deliverables. The first one should hopefully take you under 5 minutes. It's identify your team strengths, and how you plan to leverage those strengths. You can be a team of 1 if you're working on a solo project. That's absolutely fine. If you're finding a team, that's where we want you to reach out to us, reach out on Slack channels, and really get your team gathered by the end of this week. We can help you do that. The second deliverable will be research synthesis, so an affinity diagram and or a journey map. And there are a lot of technical jargon on this page, which might be completely unreadable at this point, but hopefully in the next 1.5 hours, this will be unriddled for you. So the third one will be a stakeholder map and persona or personas, and then finally a summary of your problems and your opportunity areas. So don't worry if this looks crazy right now. We are going to explain it with our workshops. Just so you know, you can submit the progress each week on the Google Assignments page. We are going to have them due formally every Friday at 8 a.m. EST, just so that the team that morning, as in the Design at Columbia team, can pull projects to highlight in the project meeting. If you need more time, that's okay. That's just the formal deadline if you want your project to be showcased at the project meeting. And also, we've had a few issues with logging into the assignments page. Unfortunately, Barnard email's not working. We're going to try and resolve that and reach out to the appropriate people in the upcoming week. So for now, if you have a columbia.edu email, use that. Otherwise, use a personal email and submit with that. Today's workshops. So I'm going to be leading Pivoting to Design and the Portfolio First Look. That should take around half an hour, but we are running around 10 minutes late, just so you know. And then Perrin will be leading us in Synthesizing your user research, and this will really help you figure out how to achieve the deliverables that we have set for you this week. Should we have a 2-minute grab some water, go to the bathroom break before this workshop?
Yes, I need that.
Okay, see you all in 2 minutes. I'll start at 22. Okay, it is 22, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with my workshop. I'll try and do it quickly so that we get back on track with time. So breaking into design. We want to emphasize that the design process is not a cookie cutter and looks different for every project. So even though we're presenting kind of a set of deliverables to achieve for your project, and you're all on different projects, we're only doing that because that's the easiest way to manage, you know, 100+ person online course. But you should know that the design process does not look the same for every project. As you learn more design skills, learn more methods to research and design and kind of synthesize everything that's going on in your project, you will be in a position to pick and choose what is best for you. And Perrin will begin to introduce you to that in his workshop as well. So breaking into design. This is a quote that I think is very relevant. I don't think you can be a designer without imposter syndrome. It comes with the territory of inventing the future because there are no rules. So something that I've, just give a little bit of context, I started pivoting to design almost a year ago, maybe like 9 months ago. And as someone who is new in their design journey, there is a constant feeling of imposter syndrome. I don't think anyone at Columbia is new to this feeling, but it happens especially in the design world. And we just want to reassure you that that's really normal, especially for something that is so visual. It's very easy to look at things that are being presented and think, oh my gosh, this is amazing, when it just looks good. So we want to remind you that this summer is about your design journey, and we'd like to ask you to not compare yourself to others, but because you know, that's always easier said than done, I thought I'd show you what the others are in this cohort. So out of 465 of you who filled in the Design at Columbia survey, only 18% of you feel proficient in design. So hardly anyone here is an expert. I think Perrin and faculty might class as an expert, but everyone else here is in the early stages of their design journey. Perrin's shaking his head, stop shaking your head. And in comparison, 66% of you want to learn about design. So I just want to emphasize that we're all here to learn. This is an encouraging space. So even if there are amazing projects that we highlight each week, we're all learning together. So just keep that in mind. I'm also going to do some myth debunking about breaking into design. So almost all the time, especially at the start of this program, we hear, you know, you need to know how to code in order to be a designer. And that's simply just not true. So whilst designers, especially in UX, may often work with software engineers and UX engineers, they themselves don't have to know how to code in order to design. If you have coding skills, that's great. You'll be able to meet software engineers, you know, on their level, I guess. You can speak their language, but it really isn't necessary in order to be an amazing designer whatsoever. Another myth: you need to know data science and statistics in order to be a designer. Wrong. Whilst designers need to understand and give weight to research, they don't need to be a data analysis whiz. You should note that this is not the case for being a UX researcher. If you want to be a UX researcher, you do need to know how to do research very well, especially if it's a quantitative UX researcher. But just to be a designer, your basic research skills will get you through. And then finally, you need to be really artsy and understand aesthetics to be a designer. And again, that's not true. And we can teach you visual design skills. So whilst visual design is a valuable skill in the final stages of prototyping, it's nothing without user-centered interaction design behind it. And that's kind of what I was alluding to a few minutes ago. Everything you see might look beautiful, might be really creative in its presentation, but if the research and the research synthesis and kind of the thought process isn't there, it's just pretty colors and objects on a slide, and it doesn't really do much for the user, which is ultimately what we're aiming for. So I'm going to do a quick 5-minute activity. I'd like you to, we're going to put you in breakout rooms of about 4 people. It's just going to be a quick say hello, you know, introduce yourself. Where are you in your design journey? What do you want to achieve? And what project are you working on? We'll give you a maximum of 5 minutes, so just keep it pretty quick. Lydia, can you?
Yep, on it. You said groups of 4?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Okay, I think I did that. Message me if yeah, okay. See you.
We are right now.
Yeah, I just graduated this month, so kind of crazy. Yeah.
Hi, Lydia.
Hey, just saying hi.
Hi.
We're just introducing ourselves. Does anyone in our team have a project now that the professor's here to critique it and judge it?
No, actually. So I have a team. Our team is working on the shuttle project, although I'm also open to hearing and like seeing other projects as well, because I'm not 100% sure that this is the project I want to work on. But at the same time, yeah.
Fair.
Well, I have a really great idea for a project, and I actually just want a grant for it, but I have no idea how to actually implement it in a way that interacts with people besides just writing your standard like 20-page paper. So that's why I need some help with the design team to figure out what's the best thing. Is it a website, an app, or a series of YouTube videos? I don't know.
So then your goal for this time is to elaborate on that, or are you working on another team at the same time?
No, it's just me. I came up with this idea 5 days ago, and then I won a grant 2 days ago for it, which is just insanely fast. So I'm just looking for people to tell me, if I tell them the idea, they'll be like, okay, the best way to interact with that, the best medium or format for that idea is this. And then I would then figure out that, but I'm just so bad at design, I don't even know where to start. Yeah.
Starting's the hardest part. Like sometimes I spend a year without starting something. And then once I do, I'm like, why didn't I just do that? How hard was that? Well, very hard and not hard at all at the same time. I don't get it.
Hmm. Oh, goodbye,
Oh,
beautiful
you're
team.
being moved back. See you later.
I'll never forget you.
You guys.
Bye. I'm just gonna stick around until this time.
In the last 30 seconds we have, I was wondering, like, what do you do if you're deciding between multiple projects? Like,
Well, I am currently on the table because I I'm also doing a hackathon at the same time. So yeah, essentially.
I would, you know, keep shopping, keep talking to people. It's not just about the idea, but like the people that you want to team with. Some of my best experiences were like ideas I gave zero shits about, but I liked the people and I just learned a lot that way. Makes sense. So,
often it can be a bit overwhelming, kind of starting in the design journey, feeling a bit lost. It's all very common, and you're not alone if you're feeling a bit lost and directionless. But I want to kind of show you that you already have foundational design skills. You know, being a Columbia student alone just means that you have foundational design skills and you have a leg up into your journey. So here are just a few foundational design skills. If you don't believe me now, come back to these few slides at the end of the process and you'll see just how many you kind of checked off. So research, you've already done the research. If you're in a team, you're collaborating. If you're asking for feedback, that's collaboration. Writing, if you're building a digital product or anything like that, that involves writing any kind of words on the page, then you've got writing skills. User empathy, I hope that's a pretty obvious one. Analytics, if you've done you know, a survey, for example, any kind of experience building a product, whether that's a website or a water bottle, that's a design skill. And your ability to translate goals, objectives, and data into experiences. And I have more. User testing, we'll get to that. Communication and persuasion. So often as a professional designer, you might be given a brief, you might have to navigate clients and stakeholders and you know, people high up in a company. If you can persuade them that your design is important in solving that problem, if you can communicate your design to them well, that's really, really important. Public speaking, again, for the very same reasons. Extracting information, creativity and ideation, we're getting there. An iterative work style, which we're encouraging with feedback. Flexibility and adaptability, visual design, which we will teach you as well. And then finding the right problem, not the one you think you have. And hopefully some of you have already kind of started finding the right problem. Perrin, did you want to hop in?
Yeah, I'll hop in. I just want to say, like, you don't have to be great at all of these to work in this field. There's something that we call T-shaped, where you have some exposure to probably all of these topics, but you have a specialty. So for example, like, I didn't go to graphic design school. None of us did if we're at Columbia, probably. And so, you know, I'm not the best visual designer in the world. I wasn't just born with beautiful, you know, drawings. But my systems thinking and what Columbia has kind of given me in kind of comparative thinking and analytical thinking is a like real strength of mine. And so like bring whatever you have in, and it's okay to have like a specialty and not be perfect at everything.
Exactly. And then there are some advanced design skills that you can start thinking about, but by no means have to start thinking about at this stage. But that includes UX research methods, you know, mastering visual design tools and prototyping tools, information architecture and content strategy, and then interaction design principles. If this looks like a bunch of jargon, that is so okay. We're not expecting you to understand any of this. We just want to start introducing you to kind of what your journey arc might look like or what it's working towards eventually. We were going to do a 5-minute activity, but because we're running short on time, I'm going to ask you to come back and do this in your own time. I think it's something really meaningful to do if you are trying to pivot into design or explore a career in design. And that is going through all of your professional and creative experiences. And that includes school projects, internships, you know, club leadership, anything that you're involved in, and then listing the foundational design skills that you show in all of them. And I think you'd be surprised at how quickly it suddenly looks like, oh, I've been designing for most of my life, I just didn't know it and I wasn't putting a name to it. So yeah, we're going to skip that for now. And then completing the pivot. So what happens once you feel like you've done the activity, you've done the summer project? How do you keep moving forwards and keep learning? So doing design projects, independent and formal being in a program like this, but for example, using class projects as an opportunity to make it a design sprint, whether you're building something or whether you can get a little bit creative with it, try and make it into a design project. And then also just doing independent design projects in your own time. Doesn't have to be an intensive 6-week sprint. You can do 5-day sprints where you do one stage of the process each day, and then bam, you've done a design sprint in a week. You can also read up on the design and the industry, and I'll give you a few book recommendations in a few minutes. And then finally, building a portfolio. And that leads me to the first look at a portfolio. So what is a portfolio? It's a space to showcase your work, and that includes, and if anything, should emphasize more your design approach, process and results as much as the final design itself. So I'm going to give you an example. We're going to walk through it together. This is a kind of case study of a project done by Phyllis Liu that she has on her portfolio. So the project is called FridgeMate. It's a mobile app reducing household food waste. And this is kind of the very first thing that you see when you click on FridgeMate. And it's, you know, the project type, the deliverables, the tools and the duration, and then a really nice photo of kind of what she's working towards in her project, or what the final project was, a little sneaky insight. So this presentation is really clear. It's not a lot of words, but I understand within 10 seconds exactly what the creative constraints are of the project. So Phyllis gives us a bit of background research. I want to emphasize that this is a really clear, concise presentation. So she's balancing the use of like images and shapes with text and highlighting what's really important. So Phyllis is thinking about food waste, but here she's highlighted, you know, key stats that are important for background research, which is 40% of food gets tossed each year. You know, $165 billion is the amount of food wasted each year. And then really highlighting the challenge and her final how might we, which is what she's landed on. How might we help people reduce household food waste? And then she's just outlining her project process. So that's similar to the design sprint that we're walking you through. So her process is empathizing, defining, ideating, and prototyping. So it's a 4-stage process, unlike our 6-stage process, but you get the idea. Next, she shows us the research that she's done in a very similar presentation. You know, she's got her competitor table here, a brief explanation, kind of before and after, and then a summary of her pain points. And this is kind of, this is partly of part of what your deliverables for this upcoming week are, is kind of that summary of the problems and your opportunities that come out of that. So again, really clear presentation. It's nothing fancy, but the story and the process is being emphasized. Yeah, so this is what we meant by pain points and opportunities. You know, how do these pain points translate for opportunities in her problem space? So one pain point is there's no suggestion on how to deal with about to expire food, and this translates to an opportunity: send push notifications about food expiry dates. So kind of making that connection. Well, how is your research feeding into your design solution? And then I haven't included the bit on interviews, but there is a section where she summarizes her user interviews, and based on that she made a persona, which is shown here. Again, very clear visual representation of the information that she's synthesized. And then based on user interviews, she's reframed the design question, because you can't expect your how might we to stay completely static. It should you know, be shaped by the research that you do as you go along. Maybe it changes, you know, halfway through the sprint and you've got to start a little bit more towards the beginning again. But it's important that you stay close to the user and you're really telling that story about how you're solving that problem. Then we've got a little bit about product structure. So for anyone who hasn't seen kind of like a flowchart diagram before, this is a visual representation of how you interact with her final product. We're not at that stage yet, so don't worry about this, but this is just a way to present that part of the process. And then finally, which is what we're working towards, is the high fidelity mock-up. So before we reach the stage, we will ask you to do lo-fi mock-ups, which will probably be paper sketches, because you can iterate on them quickly and cheaply. But this is a really clear presentation of how you would expect to use the app that she has designed at the end of the day. And this is just one feature here. She's listed several other features that she's worked on and very clearly explained how one screen moves from one to the other.
Why did I do that?
Oh my goodness. I hope someone's okay. And how the research and the interviews have led exactly to this design. And then as with every beginner in their journey, you should be reflecting about what you're learning and what you could be doing to improve at each step of the process. So Phyllis has done a really great job about thinking about kind of what's the technical feasibility, what are my creative limitations. There's a section on just after this about reflections, you know, what would she do differently if she had more time, if she had more funding, if she had more user interviews, all of this stuff that could change your product. And yeah, it just emphasizing that everything's a prototype and there's always room for improvement. So you've had a very brief look at what a portfolio might look like. So kind of just to distill what is great about that portfolio is it showcases a well-considered, meaningful, user-centered design process. And this really is the most important part of your portfolio. Like we've been trying to get across, do not lead with the solution, lead with the user's problems, and really make sure that you are telling that story, that that your research feeds into kind of your solution. Because if it doesn't, then what's the point? The portfolio also shows proof of iterating on feedback or your research. You want to have powerful storytelling. So that's a balance of words and images, you know, what is it, the Goldilocks, not too many and not too few. And then compelling visual design, which we will teach you as well as we move towards the end of the summer session. What prevents a great portfolio? So following the same format for every project, at the end of this summer session, what we don't want you to do is complete the exact same thing, but for a different project. We want you to change it up. Session 2 will look different to session 1. We'll be teaching you different methods, different things to focus on, because not every project follows the same format. Also, failing to provide context. This is what we mean by having the research fuel the solution. Relying only on images to tell the story. It's really tempting with visual design with design in general to rely on visual design, but make sure that you are you are providing something to read, something that actually tells a story. And then finally, blindly jumping to solutions or narrowing down your ideas too soon. So you want to make sure that you have explored the entire scope of your problem space before landing on one solution, which ultimately might not be the best solution for your user. Quick note on portfolio etiquette: inspiration versus plagiarism. Do not plagiarize. This is the same as writing an essay, you know, doing any kind of homework. We haven't asked you to sign an honor code, but in general, do not copy a portfolio, and do not copy the portfolio that I just showed you. Just think about a compelling way to represent your work. You've already seen student projects that have done that well just an hour ago. So
can I hop on this? Yeah. Just to clarify inspiration versus plagiarism more, as someone who's actually had their work plagiarized before, it can lose you your job. There have definitely, like, there was a situation where someone plagiarized my portfolio, they got a job, and then they discovered it was plagiarized from mine. I'm pretty sure they lost the job. So just heads up, be careful with that. And the difference between plagiarism and inspiration is, are you copying like literal text? This person copied like small paragraphs out. Are you following the same exact list of methods and kind of design principles as I have or someone else has? So it's okay to go to someone else's portfolio and be like, wow, that's a really cool way of running focus groups, or that's a really smart way to do interviews and display it. The difference is when you copy their whole user research section and process and have very similar thinking. So I hope that helps clarify. Feel free to DM me if you're like, I'm really inspired by this. How do I not plagiarize it? I'll help you out.
I love Peter's reaction in the chat. It's just a shocked face.
Oh, also, Ender, I saw that you have your hand raised if you want to unmute and ask a question.
My question is, this person in their portfolio was talking about pain points in the interview. When I was doing my interviews, I actually had trouble like finding really good insights. Like I would ask like, why do you use the social media site? And people would be like, it's fun. So I can't ask in general, like, how do you conduct good interviews? But at least how do you find pain points in an interview?
100% have been exactly where you are before. A really great way is to ask someone, can you tell me more about your journey with this product? Can you tell me more, like walk me through your experience with this product? Then ask that person, what was the worst experience you've had with this product? What's the best experience that you've had with this product? And really asking those extreme questions will help you identify pain points. Another one that you can do is, if there was only one thing that you could do, or if there's only one thing holding this product back from being absolutely phenomenal, what would it be? That can help kind of pinpoint one small flaw in a larger great product. I hope that helps.
Really great question. Really great question and really great answer. Thanks, Perrin. And Stacey's commenting that the exact same thing happened to her friend. So yeah, don't plagiarize, please. It will not look good on for you. Okay. Next point. So for now, we want you to focus on working towards a user-centered project that you will ultimately be able to showcase, you know, proudly on your portfolio when you get to that stage. We just wanted to give you a look into what you could be working towards for the end of the summer, give you a bit of direction, give you hope, inspire you maybe. But yeah, don't worry about building your portfolio just yet. We will introduce, you know, how to do that and lead you in workshops in that when it is the right time later on in the summer session. And then finally, I'm just going to point out a few resources just to get stuck in if you want to, you know, just enjoy the design industry and learn more about it. So Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman is pretty much a staple. If you haven't read it, it's like, why haven't you read it? So that should be your number one on your book list. Perrin and I are reading Creative Confidence right now by Tom and David Kelly. They're the founders of IDEO, which is it's a school and an agency slash company. It's like the god of design.
Yep, consulting company.
Yeah, there we go. And we've found it really great if you consider yourself, if when people ask you, you know, how to describe yourself and you never say creative, then I really encourage you to read that book. It might make you think differently about yourself and how you feel creatively. Mismatch is about Perrin. Have you read it? Or no? It's on our reading list.
Yeah, I've started reading it. It's about inclusive design, not only just in the terms of accessibility, but also how do you do inclusive user testing? How do you ensure ethics is baked into your products? Very, very interesting.
Amazing. And then Invisible Women is about designing for women as well as men, kind of what have been the repercussions for that in the past for designers that haven't done that. And it's actually a very unique and interesting argument for gender segregated data collection and analysis. And then finally, Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug is another staple design book, which we really encourage you to read. And then if you're a podcast listener, I won't go through all of these, but these are just some amazing podcasts that you can listen to, you know, when you're cooking, doing the laundry, whatever. Yeah, these are great resources to get started. I realize I'm running 10 minutes late, but should we have a 5-minute break?
Could be 2 minutes.
2-minute break to get water, go to the bathroom, whatever you need. And Perrin, do you want to switch to sharing your screen?
Yep, I'll take over.
If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. Or if you just want to chat. Anyone got any juicy stories about portfolio plagiarism?
I have a recommended TED Talk.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
By the guy who does the 99% podcast, 99% Invisible. He did a TED Talk on flags.
Nice.
Yeah. Technology, and he started a rant, like the first part of it was like a joke rant about bad flags and what makes a good flag. And his whole thesis was it has to like fit into like a 2x1 inch square from like a piece of paper far away.
Can you send that link in the chat?
It's a really, really good TED Talk. He like sits and mixes music in like a radio show.
Nice. I love Roman Mars. He's great. If anyone else has other book or podcast recommendations, they don't have to be about design.
I stole most of my slides for the UI design class from Don Norman's book. So if you start reading that and you take my class, you're like, oh, she didn't invent that? No, I did not.
Yeah, Norman also works in a group called Norman Nielsen Group. I think their website is nngroup.com. Phenomenal resource. It's where I've stolen a lot of content before. Borrowed is the better word. But it's a really great way, like just type in any buzzword that you see in design and then Norman Nielsen Group. There's a pretty good chance a really great and thorough resource will come up.
Yeah, Nielsen is the same guy. If you've heard of Nielsen ratings, the thing that tells you which TV shows are being watched, not on Netflix, but anyway, Nielsen ratings are a thing. That's the guy who did that. Ooh, and someone says Netflix has a design documentary series. Do you know what it? There's this one called Abstract that I have. Yeah, Abstract, Art of Design. I also like that documentary about fonts. I think it's called Helvetica. No, it's not about fonts. It's specifically about Helvetica. I learned so much about font, like I never cared about font before that.
All righty. I think I'm going to get started. Let's see if I can do an hour-long workshop in 45 minutes. So, pardon me. Totally fine. Pardon me if I go a little fast. Cool. So I'll be going over synthesizing your user research. As we saw earlier, you guys are all slaying it in the process so far with your projects. Super excited by all the submissions that we saw and keen to get you some feedback. But this is kind of the next step in the process. And speaking of the process, It's a mess. This is kind of an illustration of what the design process feels like. I would say that we're right here in this crazy phase where we don't really know where we're going. We don't have any ideas sketched out yet. We're just trying to understand problems, and there's so many problems in the world. How do you find the right one for your user? How do you find the users? So hopefully this talk will help you go from the user research you did this past week, maybe to a little lull here, where you know, cool, this is a clear opportunity area. And also, it's just totally fine to feel like crazy and you don't know what you're doing. It always feels like this way in this part of the design process. So yeah, workshop goal, synthesize your user research into actionable opportunity areas, and we'll take those actionable opportunity areas into our ideation next week to start coming up with ideas. They'll kind of nicely frame everything for us. Cool. So what does it look like to synthesize your user research? This is an overview of the process, mainly focusing on distilling the data that you have so far, both from your qualitative and your quantitative research. We're going to synthesize those insights, and we'll give you a bunch of methods for that. And then lastly, always summarizing your findings so that they're nice and digestible. This is another kind of more visual way to explain that. So right now we have distill. Imagine that these are your 10 user quotes that cover kind of really interesting learnings. And maybe some kind of learnings from your surveys. We'll kind of learn how to affinity diagram those, kind of put them together and synthesize them together into some synthesized opportunity areas, and we'll kind of summarize those at the end. So we'll go through the methods to get you there. To start off with distilling data for each key quote, survey question result, background research, whatever the hell you guys did this past week, write a few notes on what the key takeaways were for you. Write about what was surprising, write about what you think was insightful. So for example, this is some user research that I did around the transit experience back in Sydney. Or maybe this was in New York, I forget. But a user had said, there's nothing worse than you're walking and waiting, totaling up to longer than your train ride. So she was talking about commuting to work and having to walk 10 minutes, wait 10 minutes, and then take a 10-minute train ride. And from that, you know, I kind of had the key takeaways of, you know, walking to a transit option should be met with little waiting. And she should be empowered kind of with that information of when to walk to the transit station. Sometimes public transit isn't the best option to get somewhere. Sometimes there's Uber, or even walking can be faster. And if it's not the best option, we really have to clearly display that'd be faster through whatever other mode and empower the user with that data. So these are kind of the key takeaways. Another example from the Google Campus stuff that we were talking about last week around community and clubs on campus, we looked at the competitor analysis and looking at indirect competitors around Facebook, and students heavily using Facebook for events. Even us, when we ran Design Day, we didn't have a website or anything official. We just had a Facebook event that said Design Day and had all of our friends share it. And like a key takeaway from that insight and that competitor analysis is students value sharing club and event information on social media, specifically because that's where their social circles exist. And that's kind of an already established platform. So just make sure to write these key takeaways to make sure that you're documenting what you're learning through this process. We'll do one breakout room. This will be the last one for today. We just want to get you guys together again with fellow DSC people. And just talk about the takeaways that you've distilled so far. What surprised you and what are you exciting about? Really keen for you guys to connect more on the different projects that you're working on, and really focus on what you're learning and what's surprising you. So Lydia, can you throw them in some
Yeah, I'm gonna
rooms?
throw them in the same groups as before. Is that okay?
What do you guys think? And does anyone have a strong opinion in chat? Let's throw them in the same because I know you guys didn't have tons of time last time.
Rooms are open.
Cool. See you guys soon.
Alexi wants more time.
I agree.
They're going back to the same.
We don't have that much time though. We're running late, so I don't think you can have it.
Let's see what chat says. Oh, Erin didn't have an invitation because her Wi-Fi gave out. Can you add her to a group, Lydia?
She's not appearing on the unassigned, which is how I know that they're unassigned.
There may be a button at the bottom next to like participants and whatnot where you can click join breakout room. Sometimes if you don't see the invitation, you still have the option to join the breakout room there.
Also, I've turned my video off because I'm having dinner and I'm not going to eat spaghetti in front of everyone like I did last week.
If anyone that didn't join breakout rooms has any questions, happy to answer them if you're just not vibing with breakout rooms right now.
It would be so awesome if Zoom had like an integrated like polling system.
Right?
That'd be so helpful.
I'm surprised that they don't.
Oh, no, well, what you do is have people say yes or no, and then the host, like just next to the raise hand, and it tallies them, but only for the host.
Okay. I wonder if the Zoom add-ons are a thing, like plugins.
They exist.
Mm.
I don't know if if everyone has to install them individually, though. That seems
That would be amazing. Yeah.
Lydia, do you want to throw out a message to them saying like, we probably want to keep moving, so maybe 5 minutes left. I feel bad, but and just to discuss what you're surprised about in your process so far.
Done.
Amazing. I'll make this statement here. If anyone's watching the recording and you're just hanging out with us for these 10 minutes of recording, feel free to DM us if you want to chat about any of these things. Happy to hop on a quick DM to chat.
Yep, me too. Unless it's like 2030 and, you know, direct, like we have like telemind connections and there's no such thing as DM me. And in that case, just think my name and a design thought.
Lydia, when you first said 2030, I thought you were referring to 8:30 via the 24-hour clock. I was like, that's odd.
You're just tuning in. We bring people back. If you have any questions, chime in. We'll be back from the breakout rooms pretty soon.
I just assigned somebody random.
Can you guys see participants in group chat on my screen?
No. Like as you screen share?
Yeah.
No, I just see your slides.
Cool. But you can see my mouse, right?
Yes.
See, that's always weird to me because I'm like typing things, moving it around, but you don't see it.
How are we doing on time? Should I bring people back soon? Or like have 1 minute warning?
Yeah, I think 1 minute warning's good. I hope that since they went back to the same groups that they got the opportunity to vibe more.
It's also just easier when you don't have to introduce yourselves because there's all this time like, hi, my name is. You can't just like jump into the work.
Mm. Oh my God, there is a huge thunderstorm.
I can hear it. Oh my God, that is crazy.
Last time this happened, we lost power for 2 days. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But I have my phone. I can hotspot. So if I drop out, the power's gone out, but I'll be right back.
Should I close all the rooms?
Yeah.
So they have 60 seconds.
Cool. Sorry about it not being in 10 minutes.
It's okay. They'll thank us when they get out marginally on time.
Yes, we will be on time. Cool. Just giving it some time for everyone to end their breakout rooms.
Need some more of that Kahoot music. Do 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 do.
Does it show you when everyone's left the breakout room?
A bit, yes. But it's in a big long list, so it's a little bit hard to tell. You have to scroll through everyone. But there's still maybe 4 or 5 groups that are talking to each other.
Oh, looks like they've been brought back.
We're back.
Awesome. Cool. Sorry if it was a little shorter than 10 minutes, but I hope that that was helpful. I hope that you guys got to connect with more people. Just a side note, there's a huge thunderstorm coming through right now. So if you hear any thunder in the background, it's chill. If my power goes out, which it did last time, I've got a hotspot, so I'll be right back. The weather's wild, like the design process. Anyways.
God, Perrin. Ugh.
Bad jokes galore. Synthesizing insights. This is the bread and butter of this part of the process, of the define process. What I wanted to say beforehand, I know Laura said this too, is every design project is different. Choose the methods that best work for your project. And this is true of any design that you're doing. Like, it shows a lot of strength to say, I chose this method because I wanted to learn this, and this was the result. Even if you didn't learn what you aimed to learn out of that method, it still is really helpful to be intentional about what methodologies you choose in the design process. And you get interviewed on that a lot. So we're gonna go through a bunch of methods together here for synthesizing and for the step 3. Feel free to try them out and look up online if you don't like these. Just really focus on the synthesizing and insights. Yep, try them all out. This is the messy part, so let's go for it. First off, I want to go over journey maps. Journey maps, it's a visualization of processes that a user goes through in order to accomplish a goal. So there's some sort of journey. What really excites me about this is it tells the story of a user's experience. And we really love storytelling and kind of bringing in the user's voice. So here's some examples of all types of journey maps. Here is a journey map from a 24-hour really quick hackathon where we were working on a library experience. And we were really curious about all the different touch points, all the different ways people interacted with the library space. And so, you know, someone comes in, maybe they've looked online before, they try searching around the library online. They go to the library, they wander, they explore, they go to the library and they try to locate the book and can't find it because there's a million books in that library. This was more of us to put down what we thought happened before going out and do more research. And what you'll notice here is that there's kind of this emotional experience that we're trying to gauge. Is this a positive or a negative touch point? As well as the functional steps that they go through to kind of accomplish this goal of checking out a book either online or offline. Also, we kind of added these little squares here to represent touch points that were kind of always in the space. This is not a great example of a journey map, but know that you can kind of use it as a brainstorming / a way to kind of dump your current ideas in a process.
But Perrin, I have a question.
Go for it.
Isn't the journey of getting a book is you go to the library and get a book? Like, what else is there to say?
Yeah, definitely. So I think for context, we were given the prompt of the State Library of Victoria back in Melbourne. They had issues with their digital collection not being used, and they could only show 5% of their physical collection at any time because of physical space constraints. So they wanted to know what area and how might we better include access to digital materials. So, you know, someone walking into a library and walking out, a lot happens in between that kind of going in a library with a goal and walking out accomplishing it. So, you know, think about that for whatever you're working on, whatever journeys exist. And if you're still lost and don't know the touch points, go out and interview more users because they'll answer your question. And you can ask them, tell me about this time that you did this, like the time you went and got gas. Tell me every step you took. Tell me more about this part of the process. And they'll expose all of those touch points. Good question. Next up is a immersion experience that I did. This was doing multimodal transit, so trying, you know, bus and train for the similar project from earlier. And I did this across a week, and you can see again, there's the emotional and the functional aspects of this. The emotional being graphed on this axis here, and the functional, the actual steps that I took. So this was me between like getting up in the morning and arriving at work. And you have the high points, like 5-minute walk to the bus stop, listen to music, having a good time, to the low points, seeing that the bus departed early by a minute, and I gotta wait 12 minutes for the next one. And it's really good to capture kind of these functional aspects as well as emotional ones. Like I arrive at work late, but joke with my boss about the transit, and he totally lets me go because he knows how shitty the transit is. And this is really rich context of that journey that helps you understand what the experience is like day to day for the users. Another journey map, this is a more complex one, just showing you guys a bunch of examples of different ways journey maps can manifest. This was for an application process to a startup that I was a part of. And we were looking at like the sign up experience, the submitting their application, online interviews, and assessment centers. So we kind of had this functional journey here with all the actions that they're taking, the emotional journey here with, you know, how they're feeling and different problems that they have. And we started to add more content to this, like aha moments. We're bringing in that user voice here, those quotes that you brought, to really connect to the user's voice back to the functional and emotional journey. An example is here, schedule online interview on Calendly, knock on a peer in and do the interview. We have a user quote that says, the next stage is a video interview instead of voice call. I am not prepared to look professional or be in a professional setting. So that comes back to the problem. Some people do not interview in appropriate locations or on their phone because nowhere in any of our communications do we share that this was a video interview instead of a voice interview. So there are a few times where we had people show up like in a hallway, in a stairwell doing an interview. And so kind of rebranding online interviews into video interviews is an opportunity area. So you're starting to see the power of journey maps by bringing in the user's voice, really identifying what is the functional journey here and the emotional journey, and kind of using all of that information to ideate opportunities here that are truly user-driven. So, as I just said, we can use journey maps to drive our design, not only document what those stories are. And by bringing both that functional and emotional journey, we have that full picture to make the best design decisions. One last thing I just want to say, all of these parts are totally flexible. If you don't feel like communicating problems this way visually, if you want to put opportunities above aha moments here, and these quotes from users, this is kind of the key to a journey map. These are the key parts of a journey map. Like I said, you have the emotional journey. What does my user feel? The functional journey. What touch points do they go through in this experience? Quotes, what do they say? Bringing in that user's voice. And problems, what are our opportunities? So as long as you're answering these key questions, kind of in these block-like manners with the touch points, don't worry about pretty visuals. Make sure that you're really being user-driven and documenting everything along the way and getting to these problems and opportunities that you can solve in your designs later. Cool, but where do I get started? I've shown you a bunch of pretty things that work, but I haven't shown you exactly how to do them. So here's the journey map process, just an overview of how you go from documenting to identifying touch points, to synthesizing the problems and opportunities, and identifying the user's emotions for each. We'll go through it with the little case study from Google Campus. Going back to this kind of prompt, design an experience for new students to browse, search, and propose, especially during, oh, I think I cut it off. Propose new student organizations, especially during orientation. The word clubs or student organizations should be in there. This was kind of the prompt that we took on for a week-long design challenge. And so first thing, which you guys have already done amazingly, is document your interviews. I had 15 that I did that I recorded, and here's a quote, for example. I didn't join CU Dems my first semester, and now I feel like I can't go. It's not true, but it feels like the way once, it feels that way once you're out of the orientation community and into real student culture. So this quote is really key and captures an emotion of after orientation, it's hard to be a part of this community and join. I really suggest, again, documenting all of your interviews, and this way you can start aggregating those quotes towards a touch point. So put together all of those quotes that seem like they're at a similar topic. I'm not constantly exposed to things happening on campus. Someone from staff said, then school starts and this open and resourceful community drops off. These are all talking about a touch point that a student experiences. So once we've kind of affinity and kind of grouped these different quotes, we can now identify the touch point that the user experiences. I wanted to say Google Sheets or Excel is your friend here. This is what my journey map looked like as I was moving these things around and really understanding how did these quotes fit best together to communicate the user's actual story.
A question from the audience. Yeah. Do we need to do more research on emotion, like directly asking the user, or is this something you infer from the interview insights you already have?
Definitely. I would say it depends on the quotes that you have. I'm not constantly exposed to things on campus. Now I feel like I can't go. This resourceful community drops off. We actually talk about identifying emotion in a little bit. We would say that we have enough data here to say that the student feels alone. If you're going through these quotes under a touch point and you feel there's some holes, there's some gaps here, I don't feel confident saying what a student feels, that is an amazing signal to you to go talk to a few more people. This always happens when I journey map. I always find a hole or two, and it's nice because you can go back out and you can ask users more specifically about this. Like, hey, Laura, what was your experience when NSOP finished, but you still wanted to join another club? Tell me more about how you found clubs and how that search experience felt. You don't have to just start off with like, what is it like looking for a club? So that context builds the direction to fill those gaps. That is a great question. So once you've kind of grouped these quotes together, this is when you identify that touch point. I look for community. Keep these short and simple. Try to synthesize to as, again, short and simple as possible. And once you identify that I look for community touch point, you can synthesize the problems for each of those touch points that a student experiences based on the quotes that you've already grouped together. So once orientation is over, there are a few gatherings of the Columbia community and none that allow for a full exploration of clubs at once. So this is kind of the problem that people are experiencing, and you've gotten that problem directly from the user's voice, not from your own preconceived conceptions of the problem. After this, after you've identified this problem, you have all these great quotes and you feel comfortable, you can say, maybe rate it on a scale so that you can visualize it as a graph. This is a 1 out of 5 experience and students feel alone. And this will kind of connect to visualize how does the journey change over time and identify kind of pain points as that journey fluctuates. And once you have all this information together, this is when you have the data to ideate new opportunities that are user-centered. So now we ideate, and here you can see some opportunities. Extend the lifetime of the guidebook / the orientation app so that the socializing and exploration aspect of orientation does not stop when orientation is over. And maybe hold a club fair in spring semester at the beginning, once everyone is on campus, including transfer students, including students that maybe have started late. These were 2 opportunity areas that came about. And to give you what the visuals looked like, this was all done in Google Sheets, and then I put it into a design program. It does not have to look this beautiful, but this I look for community section. This is this bit of the user journey that we've just gone through. And here you can see, you know, the undergraduate experience, getting involved on campus. You can kind of see phases. You can see that students are feeling alone. You can see these problem points, all their quotes, and these opportunity areas. This is the same as the journey map breakdown that I showed you before for the, you know, pretty simpler version. So I just want to reiterate, like, you can get as simple or complex for each part, depending on the data that you have, the time that you have, and just how far you want to go in this design process. We'll be sharing out.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you go back to that crazy journey map? Or synthesis diagram? No, you were just there. Yeah, that one. Who do you present this to, and how do you present it? It just looks like so much information. It would be hard to imagine presenting all of this. Like what? I don't know what my question is. I'm confused.
Yeah, definitely. Like, what stakeholders does this matter to?
Yeah.
It matters less to the decision makers probably, and more to the design team that you're working with. It's really good to have a clear consensus across yourselves. What is the journey and what are we designing around? What are the actual problems that we are solving? So this creates a phenomenal foundation for the rest of the design process. And you can use it as a resource when you're sketching ideas or when you're working on a higher fidelity prototype and someone asks, why did you choose to do that? And you can go back to the user journey. You can pull out a very specific quote that frames that problem. And you say, this is how our users feel right now. This solves that directly. And we are listening to them here. So it's more for your team. The third step is summarizing your findings for everyone else. So we'll get there. And I'll actually show you the summary that I wrote here for this journey map in a bit. To see kind of how I framed all of these results. This is only a third of the journey map. I think there's 2 other, you know, page-long slides. You guys don't have to do that this week, but just showing you the potential. And we'll be sharing, like I said, out a Google Sheets and Figma example, not example, but template, so that you can use those and not worry about the visuals too much. We just want you to be able to kind of go through the synthesis process. And if your idea doesn't have an existing journey, I'll show you an example of that, or you're feeling overwhelmed. I understand that I've just shown you a bunch of very pretty high-level synthesis methods. Journey maps aren't your only synthesis tool. We can also just use affinity diagrams, kind of grouping related things to reach opportunity areas that are relevant. So affinity diagrams, a tool that gathers large amounts of large data, language data, so qualitative data, and organizes them into groupings based on their natural relationships. So this is just kind of your perceived relationships of all these things. Pretty much going back to those quotes where we wrote those key takeaways, that's what you're gonna put, and you're gonna put these on a bunch of sticky notes. And you're gonna start pairing these sticky notes by similar topics. So this was actually the transit example of commuting. And here it says, you know, some forms of transit are faster than cars, so Uber doesn't make sense. Sometimes public transit isn't the best option to get somewhere. And we kind of start putting together these similar ideas. And we then take blue sticky notes after that, and we kind of synthesize and summarize these ideas and key takeaways. Transit decisions depend on context, so show all options. Another one was unclear communication leads to inefficiency. So we kind of have the second tier of synthesis. And we can go one more time, especially if you have this many, you know, blue sticky notes, and say, you know, people want clearer communication to inform their decisions. And actually one more time, we kind of pair this synthesis with current transit is not reliable or efficient enough for people. We just say clear multimodal private and public choices should be clear with more information. So that is how we combined all of these takeaways here, you know, 20-ish takeaways that we got from our research into one very informed opportunity area. And this is really good if you don't feel comfortable with journey mapping, you feel lost when you're doing it. or you're kind of designing something that doesn't have an existing journey. So I'll actually walk you guys real quick through that case study that led me to do this kind of synthesis here, just to give you an idea of the context of the project that made me choose affinity diagramming. Any questions while I switch over? All good? Cool. I'll move forward. Laura, feel free to interrupt me if you see any raised hands or questions. So again, multimodal transit user research presentation. This was a 110-page deck on a bunch of user research. This has been shortened for the sake of presenting it. But we started similar to you guys with the context, with our research goals, main questions, and focus area. We wanted to understand how multimodal transit is used and perceived is the summary. And main questions: what transit routes do people prefer to take and why? How do people perceive multimodal transit using a bus and a train and walking or biking to a bus? And what opportunity areas are there for improving the door-to-door experience of commuting? And our team chose a specific focus area from that prompt of eVTOLs, they're air taxis, for medium distance travel. So for example, New York City to somewhere in Long Island is kind of the space that would occur on. So commuters from Long Island could commute for 1 to 2 hours. eVTOLs, I'll scroll down, offer a commute that is closer to 10 to 20 minutes for that. Uber's working on this, Uber Elevate. Last time I checked, they were trying to do test flights this year. It may be delayed, but they're coming to LA, Houston, and Melbourne, I believe, pretty soon. We did literature review, so doing the background research. We found a commuter pain study talking about Australian cities, so this was specific to Sydney. In Sydney, residents spend 7 whole working weeks each year commuting, 2 of which are wasted unpredictably stuck in train and car gridlock. So 2 of the 7 weeks that they spend of their lives each year is stuck in gridlock and trains not moving. Sydney especially needs multimodal transit solutions that keep up with our commuter needs. We did a bunch of research. We immersed ourselves in the transit experience, which you saw earlier in the journey map. We did interviews for commuters and experts. We did a focus group and a survey. So immersion, trying bus and train versus Uber pooling to work and knowing those experiences. And I've written some of those key takeaways here that I later use for synthesis. We take commuter interviews. We interviewed a bunch of people from different cities to get a variety of experiences. Not only to understand how shitty Sydney was in multimodal transit, but to see if any other global cities were doing this better or worse. So you can kind of almost see direct and indirect competitors playing in our decision of who we interview here. And we highlight here the commuter interview highlights, the one that we talked about earlier. Context, worst transit experience is what I asked. This was in New York, and you can see the key takeaways written here. So we have a few of these highlights. We talked to a couple expert interviewers, including someone that works in SF Metro operations. People want to have better wayfinding between modes of transit. You have that issue in San Francisco. So just saying, like, a mobile interface that utilizes GPS could provide solutions that physical signs can't. So you see these little nuggets of information that we're getting together, but we have to synthesize them into something that's meaningful. We also did a focus group. Given time, hit me up if you want to talk about focus groups. They're really fun. But I did a bunch of observations, I recorded it, and kind of distilled the key takeaways and almost synthesized them here by efficiency, convenience, reliability, and affordability. So similar to affinity diagramming earlier, I did this just for my focus group observations to start getting an idea of what are the key syntheses here. And that's when I took my immersion experiences and takeaways, the interviews, and the focus group takeaways that you just saw. All of those notes that you saw in here were turned into these yellow sticky notes. And that is what landed me on these final green stickies that kind of cover the qualitative affinity diagram synthesis. So that's the context of the project. I'll also show you a little bit more about how I ended up synthesizing these findings, especially for presentation. Oh, stop share. Present. Cool. So summarizing takeaways, identifying your key user and stakeholders. So really understanding who your users are. This is something that we want to do as a foundation. Hopefully you've gotten more familiar with who exactly your users are and their behaviors through your user research. Also refining our research into those digestible, actionable opportunity areas. So to start off with some of those key takeaways, we have personas, which are fictional characters. They're kind of created to represent different types of users that might use the designs. This is kind of make sure that you're thinking about a persona, someone else, and not getting too invested in the project from your own viewpoint. Here's some examples of some personas. Try to not use such stock photos as I did for this project. But we have different people here having very different multimodal needs. You know, Judy Miller, she's running to a client meeting and her previous meeting was late and now she has to get all across Sydney in 10 minutes or move the meeting to another date. Kevin, he's working at a startup, lives in Blacktown, which is pretty far from Sydney. He forgot to leave by 6 p.m. And he was supposed to be at dinner with his kids. And now he might miss dinner because of the shitty commute. And lastly, Robert Hill, don't forget kids, the journey matters just as much as the destination. So still making sure it's a pleasurable experience for him, just as pleasurable as a long train ride. And you can go further into these personas. So, you know, job, family, location, key quote here, but really understanding what are their goals kind of out of this journey or out of this experience, what motivates them towards those goals, and what are their current frustrations or pain points. So these can really help you understand where a user is coming from and kind of use this as a placeholder to ideate around. So that's an example of a persona. If you want to get more advanced than personas, feel free to look up archetypes. It's where you kind of summarize behaviors across a wider user group. Archetypes are great. Feel free to do a Google search. There's tons of resources on that as well if you want to go more advanced than personas. Stakeholder maps. So we've got our users locked down. We got some personas. Now let's identify the other stakeholders, the other people involved with a potential future solution. So for air taxis, there's obviously many people involved. I've split down this stakeholder map into core, direct, and indirect stakeholders. Core stakeholders are those that are involved in this core service of taking an air taxi. These are the commuters, the air traffic control that has to run everything, pilots, private companies. Actually, in our expert interviews, we interviewed a pilot as well to get an idea of everything from their perspective. Direct are those that are directly impacted by whatever design solution you come up with. They're not involved in the core services, but they are directly impacted. So these are manufacturers of these types of aircraft, transit hubs, just tall buildings in general that will want to be used as hubs for these, as well as neighborhoods with these vertiports. What will noise pollution cause for them? And indirect are those that are indirectly affected. Taxi commissions, so if a bunch of people are taking air taxis, what's going to happen to all of our taxi workers? Real estate, if you build a transit hub, what happens to the real estate in the area? The environment, this may be an electrical aircraft, but are there any negative impacts on the environment? So here you're really kind of looking at the wider view of not only who your users are directly, and at the core, but who else can be involved and impacted to make sure that you're bringing in their context while you're designing later. This really helps with kind of identifying your problem space as well. And lastly, opportunity statements. These reframe the discovered problems as clear, concise, and actionable opportunity areas. I wish I bolded those because those are so important. You could use how might we statements also, like a really nice refined how might we statement to kind of be your opportunity statement. So these were the opportunity areas that I came up with before the opportunity statement in the air taxi example, really making sure that I'm talking about these principles around trust, wayfinding, payment, reliability, efficiency, choice, and kind of saying why those matter, why those came out from all of my research. And these kind of help me create these principles later, these opportunity areas that I'll keep in mind when designing. But I did refine these opportunity areas into a statement. How might we make door-to-door multimodal travel clear, efficient, convenient, and reliable for busy commuters? So you can really see how we've distilled all of this information into something that's easy to kind of talk about in a team, communicate to your members, and just ideate off of. So we'll use this as the kickoff for the sketching and designing. And lastly, if you're struggling to frame opportunities, at least make sure to summarize the main problems and findings. So this was from the Google Campus example around orientation. Back then, I wasn't as good at design and I was kind of uncomfortable. I was having trouble reframing it and handling all of this data. So I really focused on what are the problems that I know, and I'll try to fix those and reframe those as opportunities as I go along. So here you can see like orientation is the only touch point to most clubs. The whole campus needs a solution. Clubs need better support and systems. Decentralized solutions aren't working. It's not an orientation problem, it's afterwards. These are also amazing key insights that you should take away. I just want to say overall, opportunity statements, opportunity areas, problem statements, it's all a bunch of like mumbo jumbo, jangled, like whatever. Just synthesize to like a key few statements that describe everything that you learned from this experience, and it will fall under one of those umbrellas. So just kind of narrow it down to a few sentences and you should be good. So the overview, distill your data, synthesize your insights, either using a journey map or affinity diagram, and you can summarize your findings with personas, stakeholder maps, and those opportunity/problem statements at the end. Any questions? I'm always happy to answer them now on Slack or during office hours. That's my office hours link with everything that's updated. I also just wanted to say I'll be adding some resources to websites before we upload this deck, as well as templates to use for creating journey maps, affinity diagrams, personas, stakeholder maps. I think that's it. So pretty much every method that I showed you in this presentation, we'll hand over some sort of template that you can use based on what we showed you here today. So you don't have to worry about making it pretty. So any questions? Oh, wow, I finished with 4 minutes left.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions before we say goodbye?
Did you talk about your office hours?
Yeah, I'll have office hours on Monday. I think it's from 1 to 5 p.m., 30 minutes. Just go to the Calendly and book them. Please try and bring some work that you've done already. Like try and get through some of this process before then. I'm really good at helping you get unstuck. And our time is more efficient if I'm helping you get unstuck than get started. But don't be intimidated. Open to all.
We have a question in the chat. How do we filter biased options from the data collected?
Biased options?
And
I mean,
do you want to expand, or Perrin, do you want to take a stab at it?
I think that the bias, like it depends on how you define bias. If a user has an opinion about an experience, that opinion is valid. If you're the one introducing bias, then that's more difficult. If you're asking them, is this a shitty experience? And they say yes, then you shouldn't use that data. If you ask them, how is this experience? And they say it's shitty, and then they say kind of a logical reason to you, it's still a valid reason for that user. So there isn't necessarily like bias in what the user says, but there may be bias in your process. If you feel like there is bias in your process and you can't redo things, just make sure to put that at like the bottom of the slide, what you believe that bias was. For example, I could only interview my university friends when looking at university students. Just write that at the bottom of the slide if you want to be thorough.
We have some more questions. When it comes to personas, should you try and frame goals, motivations, frustrations into the problem you're trying to answer, or more generally?
I would say into the problem space. If there's any, motivations or goals that aren't about the problem space but are related to, for example, the father that has to get home to hang out with his kids. His values and motivations to be home with his kids are really important and shared amongst many users. Is that about commuting? Not really, but it is a valuable context.
Great. And then, is there a general resource for asking better questions in interviews? I was asking open-ended questions and got nowhere.
General resource. I'll look into that. I imagine IDEO's design kit is pretty good at helping you frame questions. If you're asking a bunch of open questions and you're not discovering any problems, try making your problem space more broad. If you're not getting any answers, there may not be a huge addressable problem in that area.
Also, just a general UX research resource is Zero to UX. It's a YouTube, this guy called Kevin Liang, he's a YouTuber. I'll type it in the chat, but he has, his entire YouTube channel is dedicated to research methods, and I'm pretty confident he has one about doing user interviews and general tips on that.
Are we going to post the resources somewhere?
Yep, resources will be on this deck as well as posted in the #resources Slack channel.
Right on.
I'm going to try and do that tonight.
Yay.
Woo.
I think we could call it a day. I'm happy.
Yay.
Right on the dot. Also, if you have any feedback for how today was run on the Kahoot, on breakout sessions, anything, please feel free to slide into our DMs, whether that is privately or in #feedback, like the channel, because we really appreciate it.
And we'd love if you use the feedback, methods that we taught you, like the love sandwich. Thank you guys for so much work. Kahoot sucked. No, but I still love you. No, I'm making it, but something like that. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Peace out. Stay safe. Keep jamming. Slay it at design. You're doing amazing.